Father and Son. That same night, far away in Sparta, Telemachus lay awake while the rest of the household slept. The young prince tossed and turned uneasily in his bed. He had visited old King Nestor in Pylos, and then traveled on to Sparta, where he was staying with Menelaus and Helen. Both great kings had welcomed him and treated him with honor for his father's sake, but neither knew what had happened to Odysseus since the fateful day when the Greek army sailed away from Troy. Telemachus was now convinced that his father must be dead, and his troubled mind turned back to Ithaca. He would have persuaded his mother to marry one of the suitors before it was too late. Perhaps it was already too late. Athena stood at his bedside watching, smiling to herself. He looked so much like his father, her favorite. Sensing her presence, the young prince jolted up in his bed. "Don't be alarmed," she said, sitting down beside him. "I have come to tell you that you must return once to Ithaca. The time is ripe, but you must be careful, for your mother's suitors have laid an ambush for you in the narrow straits between Ithaca and Samos. They intend to kill you and take all of Ithaca for themselves. You must sail by night and slip ashore on the south coast in the cove of Pyrrhus, while your ships sail on to the city without you. Go straight to Eumaeus. You will be safe there, and you can send him to tell Penelope that you have returned. For the moment that is all you need to know." The goddess then wished Telemachus well and vanished into the night. The young prince waited impatiently for dawn. At the first sign of light he hurried off along the dusty road to Pylos. Stopping only to change horses, he reached Pylos by nightfall and went straight into his ship, where his crew was already waiting. It was not long before the city lights had faded behind them. All that night the ship raced along the Peloponnesian coast, driven by the tailwind. By dawn they were already passing Zactenius, and they reached the southern coast of Ithaca as darkness fell. Meanwhile, Odysseus had spent 2 restful days wandering the rugged hilltops, delighting in the land he knew and loved so well. In the evening he sat by Eumaeus by the fire and swapped more stories of the good old days. They talked of the present time as well, and the more Odysseus learned about the suitors, the more his heart hardened against them. It was almost midnight on the 3rd evening, and the other herdsmen were already fast asleep. Odysseus, in his beggar's disguise, sat before the blazing fire, still mulling over the past with Eumaeus. Outside the dogs only whined in greeting as the familiar young man made his way toward the cottage. Eumaeus and his guests jumped up in alarm when the door creaked open, and a chilly draught swept across the room. The tall figure stepped out in the moonlit night and closed the door safely behind him. Eumaeus leaped up and embraced him warmly. When they turned back toward him, Odysseus recognized his own features in the dimly lit face of the new arrival. "Dear Telemachus, thank the gods you're safe," said Eumaeus. "When I heard of your journey, I was afraid you'd never return, like your dear father. But what on earth brings you here? Is there any news?" "No news, old friend, no news of the things that matter, although I've seen Menelaus and lovely Helen, and I've talked with the wise Nestor of my father's greatness and his glorious deeds. But only his bright memory remains. Of the man himself I found no trace." As Telemachus spoke, Odysseus got up to offer him his seat by the fire. The young prince took him gently by the arm and made him sit down again. No, old stranger, please. You're a guest in this house. For me, it's a second home." Telemachus squatted on his haunches in the hearth and warmed himself against the fire. Then he turned to Odysseus and examined him closely. "Now, tell me, old man, where are you from? What brings you here?" Odysseus repeated the story he had told Eumaeus. When he had finished, Telemachus looked downcast. "It makes me so sad," he said quietly, staring at the fire, "to think that I can offer an old companion of my father's no better hospitality than this. You fought alongside my father on the dusty plains of Troy, and no doubt he suffered as you did on the difficult journey home. Perhaps he wandered the world like you and fell into captivity. Perhaps he still languishes in slavery in some distant land. If that's the case, I pray that death bring him an early release. As for myself, I've become a stranger in my father's palace. I'd like to invite you to enjoy its many comforts, but I'm afraid you'd only suffer the derision of my mother's suitors." "Noble prince," replied Odysseus, "your words are kind, but your concern is unnecessary. I'm so used to the rags, which pass for clothes, and the hard ground for my bed, that comforts of a palace would do little for me now. However, I'm sorry to hear of all your troubles. Do you not have brothers or cousins who could help you drive these scourgers from your father's halls? I wish I were young enough to fight, or even that I were Odysseus himself. Then I'd destroy these evil men, or die in the attempt. I'd sooner die fighting for my rights than suffer from the daily humiliation that you endure. No, old man, I do not have any brothers. I come from a line of only sons. As for cousins, all the fine men who help me now went with my father to Troy. I hate the suitors, and I'd love to see them get what they deserve, but it would be a foolish gesture to throw away my life in a hopeless cause. No, unless by some miracle Odysseus returns, and together we can stand against these enemies, my mother will have to get married to rid our halls of them. Odysseus was pleased with his son's wise answer, but he only stared into the fire and did not say a word. And now, Eumaeus, said the young prince, let me tell you why I'm here. The suitors wanted to kill me in an ambush before I got back to these shores, but thanks to Athena, I was able to avoid them. I want you to go to the palace and tell my mother I'm back before I risk showing my face. If I disappear without a trace, the suitors could have pretended they knew nothing about it, but I can't believe that they dare to kill me in broad daylight in front of my own people. Of course, dear Telemachus, I understand you perfectly. Should I pass by the farm on my way to tell old Laertes too? Since you left for Pylos, his despair has doubled, and he neither eats nor sleeps. No, go straight to the palace. I can't take any chances. Ask my mother to send her old housekeeper to my grandfather. Then come back here. It was dawn. The stars had already faded in the early morning light, and the sky was reddening in the east. Eumaeus threw another log on the fire and wrapped his thick cloak around him. I'll go at once, he said. I'll be gone all day. Help yourself to whatever you need. Eumaeus slipped quietly out the door, and in the same moment the goddess Athena slipped in. She made herself visible to Odysseus alone and spoke in a voice that only he could hear. Odysseus, now is the time to reveal yourself. Tell your son everything. Tomorrow go to the city and enter your palace, and remember, be as you always are, wise and bold. I will be close by. Before she left, the goddess touched the old beggar with her wand. At once his back straightened and his skin was made tight and smooth. His dim eyes brightened, and his thin gray hair turned thick and black. In the palace of his rags he wore Aret's purple tunic once again. Telemachus looked up and paled. Stranger, you must be a god. I pray that you've come in a friendly spirit. Telemachus, don't be afraid of me, for I am no god. Come closer and see how alike we are. And so we should be, for my name is Odysseus, and you're my dear son. And with those words he threw his arms around Telemachus and held him close. Great sobs welled up from both men, and the father's tears mingled with the son's as they ran freely down their faces. They then stood back and examined each other. They laughed with joy to see how alike they were. They sat down before the fire, all thought of sleep forgotten, and started to tell each other about their lives. Odysseus told his son about the years in Troy and the story of his unlucky journey home. When he finally finished, the young prince had laughed and cried 100 times. In the early afternoon they took the skin of wine and a basket of food and walked to a spot they both knew on the hillside above the swineherd's cottage. Sheltered among the large rocks, they could look out across the island to the city, while Telemachus told his father of his childhood and his early youth and what had happened since the suitors came. Later, as the sun was going down behind the hills, they turned their mind to the present. Dear son, said Odysseus, listen well to what I have to say. The suitors are many, and we are just two, but I promise you this, with our strength and guile, and the help of Athena, we'll destroy them all. Tomorrow go back to the palace. Say nothing about me, not even to your mother. I'll follow in my beggar's disguise. The suitors will abuse me. Say nothing. When it's time to strike, I'll tell you. Now, we must return to the cottage, for Eumaeus will be back soon. And one last thing, whenever you're afraid, remember to trust in me. Dear father, alone I was afraid, but now that you're here, I have the courage of 100 men. If Zeus and Athena are with us, then the suitors are surely doomed.